All right, chapter 1-6, multiplying and dividing real numbers. So remember, when we multiply fractions, you multiply going straight across. Multiply going straight across. When you multiply fractions, you can do your cross reducing, a numerator and a denominator, or even put a fraction in lowest terms, but ultimately you multiply straight across. When you divide fractions, keep, change, flip. Remember that rule? Keep, change, flip. Keep your first fraction as it's supposed to be. Change division to multiplication. And find the reciprocal of your second number. You've heard me say keep, change, flip since 6th grade. Keep your first fraction, change division to multiplication, find the reciprocal of your second number. Whether you are multiplying or dividing integers, positive times positive will always result in a positive answer. A negative times a negative will also result in a positive. The only time you get a negative answer is when one is positive and one is negative. Or if you have an odd number of negatives being multiplied together, your answer will be negative. Questions so far? Couple of new multiplication rules for you. The identity property of multiplication. Just to review here, the identity property of multiplication. You're going to have to jump down. It looks like I am out of order here in your notes. In the identity property of multiplication, what is the identity property of multiplication? Give me an example. Cole.
3 times 1
Equals 3. So anytime you multiply a number times 1, the answer results in itself. Multiplication property of 0. Give me an example there. Multiplication property of 0. See ya.
2 plus 0.
Multiplication.
2 times 0.
And what is 2 times 0?
0.
Okay, so the property's not done until we state what it's equal to. 2 times 0 equals 0. Multiplication property of -1. If I take a number like 6 times a -1, what kind of an answer are you going to get? -6. It turns it to its opposite sign. Turns it to its opposite sign. So on the contrary, what if I had a -8 times a -1? What's the result going to be? Positive 8. So whatever you're multiplying times a -1, it turns it to its opposite sign. Inverse property of multiplication. In the inverse property of multiplication, this would be like multiplying 2/3 times its inverse of 3/2. So notice I've taken 2/3 and I've multiplied it by its reciprocal. When you take a fraction and you multiply by a reciprocal, look what happens when you do cross reducing. What can the 2's both be divided by?
2.
So both of those diagonals are going to result in 1. What about your 3's? Both can be divided by 3, so your diagonals result in 1. So if you're going to do the inverse property of multiplication, your answer is going to be 1. If you multiply a number by its reciprocal, the answer is going to be 1. So let's fill in the top of your notes. There was that section that we jumped. So multiplication property of a -1 times what's -5? Fill in +5 in that blank. Next one, -1 times what equals a +5? -5. -1 times a -5 will result in a +5. Exponents. We have 3 different types of questions. Some are in parentheses, some are not. Who can explain how we're supposed to think about the very first question here? How are we supposed to think about that first one?
3 cubed times -1.
3 cubed times -1? That could be one way of thinking about it. Is this negative being protected by a parentheses? No, it is not. So this negative is really a -1, and then we are taking the base of 3 to the 3rd power times itself 3 times. So it's a -1 times 3 times 3 times 3. Please write that underneath that question in your notes. Now, what is 3 times 3 times 3, or 3 to the 3rd power? 27 times a negative is a -27 for an answer. If that would have been to an even exponent, -3 to the 4th power, that would have resulted in a positive answer. Or excuse me, would have resulted still in a negative answer. In this one, how are we supposed to think about it?
-3 times -3 times.
So this one, because the -3 is in parentheses, that parentheses is being repeated 3 times. So write that underneath your second question. -3 times -3 times -3. What is -3 times -3? +9. Now take that +9 times the -3, and you're going to get -27. In this case, if we would have had an even exponent, we would have had a positive answer now. Isn't this last one similar to the very first one that we had? So this one is again -1 out front, and then you're taking the 3 in parentheses times itself 3 times. Questions on any of those? Okay, simplify each expression. -3 times -11. A negative times a negative is a positive. Positive what? 33. How am I going to multiply a -6 times 3/4? Put -6 over 1. And how do we multiply fractions? Straight across. Do you want to do cross reducing first? Let's do cross reducing. What can 6 and 4 both be divided by? 2. So a -6 divided by 2 is a -3. Notice I gave the negative to my top numbers because I don't want to forget about that negative sign. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Multiply straight across. -3 times a +3 is -9. 1 times 2. Can I leave my answer as a -9/2? No. What is a -9 divided by 2? 2 goes into 9 how many times? 4. How many are going to be left when you subtract? Should have a -4.5. Evaluate 5 times r times s. So remember, when I replace a number with a variable, I need to make sure that I'm putting everything inside parentheses that's being replaced with a variable. So 5 times negative 18 times negative 5. Is this going to be a positive or a negative answer? Should be a positive. 2 negatives make a positive, and you're multiplying times another positive. Take out your calculators. Multiply 5 times negative 18 times negative 5. What is the result? Does everybody agree? 450? Yep. Try evaluating negative 2k times 5 times n, for k is 3 and n is negative 7. So again, when I replace k with a 3, make sure I use parentheses. In the next parentheses, we have 5 times n, or 5 times negative 7. What's the first thing we should do in the order of operations? Inside parentheses. So what is 5 times negative 7? Negative 35. Next. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. And negative 6 times negative 35. Positive or negative? Positive what? Positive 210. Use the expression negative 5 and 5/10 times a over 1,000 to calculate the change in temperature for an increase of altitude A of 7,200 feet. Isn't that 7,200 feet going to go where A is? So our question becomes multiplying negative 5 and 5/10 times the fraction 7,200 over 1,000 to calculate the temperature and how the temperature changes as you start to climb, increasing in altitude. So in the order of operations, what's the first thing we're going to do here? First thing we're going to do here. Divide 7,200 divided by 1,000. Should be what? I still didn't hear you.
7.2.
7.2. Negative 5 and 5/10 times 7 and 2/10. Negative times positive is a negative. 5 and 5/10 times 7 and 2/10.
39 and 6.
Use the expression to calculate the change in temperature for an increase in altitude. Are they telling us what we're using for a temperature here? It does not. So we do not know if this is degrees Celsius or degrees Fahrenheit, but I can put my degree symbol in there. So there's a change of 39.6. It's going down 39.6 degrees. Next questions. Use the order of operations to simplify each expression. Letter A, positive or negative answer?
Positive.
Not positive.
Oh,
Why is this not going to be positive? This is absolutely a negative answer. Why?
because the negative isn't protected by parentheses.
The negative is not inside those parentheses. So this is going to be a negative answer no matter what. So this is a negative 1 times 0.2 being taken times itself 4 times. So it will result in a negative answer. Now, what is 2/10 raised to the 4th power? What do do we get?
0.0016.
16
10,000.
10,000ths. Now multiply that times the negative one out front. It is a negative 16 10,000ths. On the contrary, if I have that negative 2/10 inside parentheses, what kind of an answer is this going to be?
Positive.
This will now result in a positive answer because you're taking a negative times a negative, which is going to be a positive. These two negatives are going to be a positive. So the answer here is a positive 16 10,000ths. You have to pay attention to whether or not that base is inside parentheses. If there are no parentheses, the negative is not part of the exponent. A and B are not the same type of question. Think about this question being in the order of operations. If I had 3 times a negative 4 to the second power in parentheses, actually, let's do it this way. Let's do 3 minus negative 4 in parentheses, and 3 minus 4 to the second power here. See the difference between them? In this one, what are you doing? Negative 4 times negative 4, which is positive 16. Over here, this one would be, so this is my subtraction sign being brought down, correct? Over here, this is 3 minus 4 squared is going to be positive 16. This is a subtraction sign in this question. It is not the exponent. Simplify each expression here. 70 divided by negative 5. Positive divided by a negative is a negative. What is 70 divided by a negative 5?
Negative 14.
Negative 54 divided by a negative 9. Negative divided by a negative is a positive what? Positive 6. Evaluate. We have a negative xy minus 4z to the second power. So this negative is out front of my fraction. What are we replacing the x with?
4.
4. What are we replacing the y with?
Negative 2.
Negative 2. Then I have a subtraction sign. Z to the second power, it's 4 times z to the second power, so put your z inside parentheses and your exponent outside of the parentheses. Now, what is the first thing we should do in the order of operations here? Exponents. So I've got this negative fraction, minus 4. What is a negative 4 to the second power? Negative 4 times negative 4 is
16.
positive 16. What's the next thing you're going to do in the order of operations? No. Divide. This division question of negative 4 over negative 2 comes first. Notice I'm going to assign this negative sign to that top value. So it becomes a negative 4 divided by a negative 2. Otherwise, if I don't do that, I'm likely to forget that negative sign. So what's a negative 4 divided by a negative 2? Positive 2. Now what's the next thing I'm going to do in the order of operations? Now multiply. What's 4 times 16? And 2 minus 64 is?
Negative 62.
One more. Evaluate P over R for P is 3 halves and R is a negative 3/4. So on top we have 3/2. On the bottom we have a negative 3/4. How do we divide fractions? Dividing fractions, what? Keep, change, flip. So I'm going to keep 3/2 the way it is. This division sign, or my fraction sign, is going to become a multiplication sign. And then I'm going to flip a negative 3/4 to become a negative 4/3. It was a negative 3/4. The fraction still remains negative, but I'm going to flip that fraction over. Now, can you cross-reduce your diagonals? Both of those can be divided by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1 on both diagonals. Do you want to reduce your other diagonal as well? What can those both be divided by?
2.
2. What is 2 divided by 2?
1.
What's a negative 4 divided by 2? A negative 2. Now multiply going straight across. 1 times negative 2? Negative 2, and 1 times 1 is 1. So negative 2 over 1 is negative 2 for a solution. Questions? Kiara,
I can't see you over Kyler's head.
then you need to move your